Today let's do a Serum sound design tutorial. You'll learn how to make a deep house bass like this from scratch. I'll show you how I come up with a melody, use Serum to tweak the sound, how to layer it with drums, and add some SFX to make it sound extra dirty. So let's just get right into it. In piano roll, start with a G note. This isn't random. Actually, the G note has a lot of frequencies where the sub bass is most present and noticeable. And the rule is, more bass equals more energy. So this G note will give our bass line and drop that extra energy. But which note's next? Learn to listen and let your ears guide you. I like how this D and D sharp work together. Catchy, but let's go further. By humming the notes, I experiment with going lower to end up with this. For the second bar, I keep the same 1/16th note rhythm, but mix up the notes. If you guys want more tutorials on melodies, just let me know. But now we're left with this. For bars 3 and 4, I copy and paste what we have so far and just add a note for variation to keep it interesting. Now, you're gonna learn 2 ways to make sounds. The first gives you more control. First, go to Analog, Basic Shapes, and hit Sine Wave Table. Move the oscillator down 2 octaves. Use oscillator B as a FM signal for oscillator A. And you can take down the volume since we're only using it as a signal. Hit Sine Wave Table on this, and select FM from B to the warp knob in oscillator A. You can now play with the knob, changing the amount of FM, which will affect the character of the sound. Listen. Now let me show you another way. This method is simpler. Again, select FM wavetable from the digital wavetable section and select FM Freak. Great. Now this wavetable position knob will change the character of the sound, and you can play around with the envelope if you want a more plucky bass. Now bring the sustain down and decrease decay around 550 milliseconds. To make your bass sound deeper, you're gonna want to add a filter and let it open up at a certain destination. There's no fixed amount to use, so tweak it until it sounds good to you. Remember to trust yourself. Next, use the compressor to control the dynamic range of the sound. The goal here is gain reduction. Tweak the knobs until you like how it sounds. And again, trust yourself. Another idea, bring the rand knob all the way down. This way the notes play in the same spot on the wavetable each time, making the sound more consistent. Now, some soft clipping distortion to smoothly saturate the bass sound. Next, EQ to boost the low end around 3 decibels so that the sub-bass frequencies pop out more. You could stop here, but you could also go further. Let's make the bass more wide. How? By putting some of the mid frequencies of the bass in stereo with some reverb. Use a high cut filter on oscillator A to remove the very low end of your bass. Cut frequencies below 121 Hz. Those ones will just keep mono. Now use the sub oscillator to fill up the frequencies we just removed. Make it 1 octave lower and hit the direct knob. This will prevent the sub oscillator from being influenced by effects we're about to add. The more you increase the oscillator, the more sub bass frequencies you're going to have. Now add effects to your mid bass to make it wider. Reverb is pretty common in deep house and it gives it a dope vibe. Just make sure to increase the low cut on your reverb because the low end in your reverb will make a muddy mix. Now you can add chorus to make it wider and bring the filter down to 600 Hz to make sure it's only affecting the low mids here. This hyperdimension tool makes the sound even more wide. Use some trial and error to find what you like. Me, I like to play with the detune knob together with the rate setting. Now alright, to add more attack to it, let's use the noise oscillator. Let a short envelope determine the volume of this noise to add some good attack. Link your envelope to the volume knob, and I like to use an analog noise for this purpose, just to be specific, the J106 HP noise. But trust whatever sounds good to you. If you want even more attack, link the same envelope to the pitch oscillator of A to increase it more. Okay, now you should have a bass that sounds like this. Now let's add drums so we can hear how it sounds in context. As always, I'm using samples from my Euphoria Deep House sample pack. This way I can quickly drag and drop the sounds I need. It has 410 samples and loops, 145 Serum presets like this one, and 5 FLPs to help you produce faster. To start, sidechain your bass using this Kickstart plugin. This creates a bit of space for the kick to punch through. And speaking of kick, I chose this punchy one. The kick that I chose is very long, so I'm gonna make it shorter to match our bass more. I drag and drop this clap for my sample pack and use the out knob to make it sound more together by removing the release. Next, a pre-shifted clap. To introduce the clap, just make sure you set the BPM of the sample accordingly, and reduce some sustain to make it tighter. Now I drop a hat to get that classic deep house sound, using it only every half beat in the last 8 bars to make the soundtrack more interesting. This fill creates a transition between the first and second part of the drop, and this sounds okay, but I'll add a drum loop to make the rhythm a bit more interesting, and just one more part to go. Okay, now let's make it a certified deep house banger. First, downlifter on when the drop kicks in. Sidechain it to make some room for the transient of the kick, some ambience to fill up the track a bit more in the second part, and it sounds like this. This adds a lot of energy when in the mix. Also consider automations on the wavetable position from the bass sounds like this. This way it doesn't get boring as it repeats. Variations like this make all the difference in your track. By automating this knob and linking it to the wavetable position, well, here's what it all sounds like together. Just remember guys, this is music, it's subjective. Take what you like from this tutorial and change what you don't. It's about finding your own sound, so trust your ears and trust yourself. And if you want to check out my samples, just go to musiccore.co and leave a comment about what you want to learn next.